An emergency broadcast echoes across the city, triggered by the surge of accident reports flooding in from every district. News alerts blare that monsters have appeared in Sadaman, prompting immediate deployment of response teams and masterclass combatants. Just before a car is completely annihilated, a faint transmission cuts through the static something about the Zenkaku teen. Gigantic, nightmarish birds with reptilian traits rampage through the already ruined streets. A young warrior stands his ground against the towering beasts, their taloned limbs slashing at the air several meters above him. The creatures release a deep, guttural rumble. Then, with shrill intensity, they unleash an ear-splitting screech that carries far across the shattered cityscape. Steeling himself for battle, the young warrior mutters under his breath that his nerve chambers are about to burst from the strain. In the next instant, a colossal surge of violet lightning detonates, its power driving the beasts into uncontrollable frenzy. As they shriek in madness, the young fighter conjures a massive spear of energy high in the sky. The weapon's brilliance sparks a distant thunder, followed by a crushing wave of blinding light. The blast, carried by a violent gale, rips the heads clean off the monsters, leaving only their feathered torsos collapsing in heaps. The warrior stares, stunned, wondering what in the world just happened as the fallen beasts crash to the ground, shaking the earth beneath him and his subordinate. His companion, astonished, praises her captain's overwhelming strength, yet the young man denies responsibility, explaining that large-scale destruction isn't his forte, unlike the Queen's blade. Both of them glance around warily, confused, since no one else should be in the vicinity. The warrior asks if there are any other awakened teams operating nearby, but she shakes her head, confirming it's only the two of them. Suddenly, he spots a glowing magical stone among the debris and wonders why anyone would abandon such a priceless item. Still silent, the captive remains fixated on the power he just witnessed, the sheer precision and impact of those strikes. Snapping out of his thoughts, he orders his subordinate to activate the matrix and coordinate with the recovery team for body retrieval. It's then that something unusual catches his attention. Amidst the destruction, a single restaurant stands perfectly intact among the ruins. Examining the scene closely, he thinks that if whoever unleashed this devastation had miscalculated even slightly, the owner would have lost that entire property. Adjusting his spear on his shoulder, he jokingly invites his partner to join him inside for a drink. The scene transitions. Birds peck at the hood of a parked car nearby. A young man approaches, startling them away, before descending the narrow stairway of an alley. For a brief moment, he surveys the empty street, then straightens his shirt, steps into the same abandoned restaurant. Inside, he calmly begins to prepare a meal. Checking the pantry, he discovers a large, unspoiled cut of meat. He sets it on the counter beside fresh cloves of garlic and sprigs of rosemary. Yet, as he studies his setup, hesitation flickers across his face. He wonders if he might have taken too many pieces of bell tomate, then reasons that, since the monster corpses have likely already been collected, he might as well use this cut for dried meat. Suddenly, his quiet cooking is interrupted by a knock at the door. A voice calls out, asking if Kang Chul is inside. Answering, he confirms his identity as Kang Chul and finds himself face to face with a representative of the Awakened Association. The man explains that a flock of Beltos invaded earlier and assumes the young man must have been terrified. He goes on to say he's been inspecting nearby homes and shops to check for any damage. Mid-conversation, a mouth-watering aroma drifts through the air, catching his attention. He inhales deeply, remarking on how incredibly fragrant the food smells. With a hint of sarcasm, Kang replies that it's only natural. After all, this is a diner. The visitor chuckles and asks if he could join for breakfast, admitting he's been on the streets since dawn without a single meal. Kang offers no objection. As the representative steps inside, he's instantly struck by the sight before him. The interior is spotless and beautifully arranged, evoking the warmth of old K-drama diners from before the portal era began. Taking a seat, the man asks for a menu, but Kang explains that he cooks depending on the ingredients available each day. Intrigued, the visitor asks if there's something like a daily special, and Kang confirms there is. Tying on his apron, he reveals that today's dish is Belto steak. The man freezes, startled and uneasy at the mention of that name. He blurts out that he saw 10 of those monstrous birds earlier. Their corpses dropped right into the market square. Kang replies casually that thanks to that, he managed to secure plenty of fresh meat, and though the creatures are predators, their flavor is surprisingly refined. The representative, both curious and nervous, grows excited to try the meal, but worries quietly if he can actually afford to pay for it. Meanwhile, Kang begins slicing thick portions from the hefty cut of meat he'd chosen. He sprinkles them evenly with salt and pepper, each movement calm and deliberate. 30 years ago, he remembers awakening in a world utterly unlike his own. A realm where dragons soared freely through blood-red skies and monsters prowled the lands below. In that merciless world, he fought desperately for survival, facing every creature and foe that dared to challenge him. Over time, he grew stronger, powerful enough to bring down dragons themselves. Eventually, he even vanquished the Demon King with the edge of his formidable blade. Through that endless strife, he carved his name as a legendary warrior. After countless battles, he finally found a way to return home to Earth. But when he did, he discovered that portals had already spread across his world, and the Earth he once knew no longer existed. As he continues seasoning the meat, his thoughts wander back to all he learned during those years, the hidden weaknesses of beasts, the patterns of their power. While frying the steak and letting the sauce simmer, he wonders quietly whether there's still a reason for him to take up arms again. As he carefully plates the dish, he reflects that the people of Earth now defend their world in their own way. Pouring the last of the sauce over the meat, he concludes silently that this is simply what the new era has become. The cook steps back and observes his creation with calm satisfaction. The bell-toe steak glistens perfectly on the plate, accompanied by asparagus and a fresh salad. His customer's eyes widen in awe. He hadn't expected such elegance from a place so humble. With delicate precision, the man lifts a fork full of meat and brings it to his lips. He's astonished by the juiciness, marveling that the very creature once responsible for chaos could now bring him such pleasure. Relishing every bite, he decides it's best not to overthink it. At this point, the cost of the meal doesn't matter at all. It's worth every coin. When he finishes, he eagerly asks if he can have another serving, and Kong agrees even though the bell-toes were meant for his own supply. Sometime later, after devouring a second plate, the representative wipes his mouth and requests the bill. To his surprise, Kang calmly explains that he never charges customers for their first visit. Embarrassed but grateful, the man thanks him, saying the meal has completely washed away the fatigue of his long day and he promises to return. Kang smiles faintly, pleased by the man's genuine reaction. He eventually mentions that the dish would normally cost 10 silvers. As the representative steps out of the diner, a thought crosses his mind. Turning back slightly, he advises Kang to stay alert and evacuate the next time monsters appear nearby. Handing over his business card, he warns that although shops and clubs are reopening, the area remains dangerous. Kang glances briefly at the card's details. His eyes linger on the information written there. The representative walks away, muttering to himself that these are harsh times for the unawakened. Returning to his kitchen, Kang thinks kindly of the man, feeling he's met a good-hearted soul, and wishes him well. Then, picking up his own fork, he takes another bite of the steak, chewing thoughtfully before realizing it turned out even better than he'd hoped. Night has fallen outside, the quiet streets bathed in the glow of the owl's hoot. Stretching his arms, Kang muses aloud that another day has quietly come to an end. His eyes drift to the bell-toe eggs he'd bought earlier, and he wonders what dish he might craft from them next. Suddenly, the diner door bursts open with a loud crash. Standing there is a man named X, his expression fierce and threatening. He's finally found Kang. The young cook meets his glare with calm, unshaken eyes. Seething with anger, the warrior declares he's come to reclaim what rightfully belongs to him. Hours earlier, back at the Sediamond Market, Kang had reflected on how difficult it had become to find certain ingredients ever since monster meat became humanity's main food source. In time, even monster farming had been replaced by artificial cultivation, yet the unmasked flavor of genuine monster meat kept the man soaring. Because of that, the local market continued to thrive, trading in every part harvested from those creatures. It was at one of those bustling stalls that Kang had purchased the bell-toe eggs. Before finalizing the deal, he had inspected each one carefully with his detection eyes. The power came from a dragon-forged artifact, allowing him to see through objects and identify their inner nature. It was one of the many relics he had stolen long ago from the Demon King tools he still relied on to this day. With it, he could perceive the essence of all things, and even discern when someone was lying. After finishing his test, he decides to pick up 3 eggs from the stall. Yet, his curiosity is drawn to one peculiar egg that remains unreadable even under the artifact's analysis. So, he asks the vendor to wrap that mysterious one as well. Later, at the restaurant, he cracks open one of the eggs into a container, reflecting on how back on the battlefield he barely ever had the time to eat. Back then, any meal felt like an indulgence, though with time, those harsh days faded away. Now, he prepares a hearty dish, a sandwich with scrambled eggs made from one of the bell-toe's eggs. To him, food and its aroma are powerful triggers of memory. Whenever he eats something like this or drinks Cole's milk, his mind drifts back to his old comrades. Taking a bite of the snack, Kang savors every texture, every flavor, every blend of taste. It's genuinely delicious, but more than that, it warms his heart with nostalgia. Gazing out the window, a touch of melancholy creeps in as he wonders if missing those people means he's getting old. Speaking softly to himself, he examines the bluish egg from afar, puzzled by his inability to get a proper reading. From what he knows, a dragon artifact forms the moment the dragon is born, imbued with all its essence, usable by others but never by the dragon itself. Studying its hue and scale pattern, Kang begins to suspect that he might actually be holding a rare dragon egg. Just as he's considering how best to handle it, an angry voice cuts through his thoughts. At first, Kang doesn't quite grasp the situation. The young man standing before him repeats that he's here to reclaim what belongs to him. Pointing at the blue item in Kang's hands, his tone grows sharper. Kang activates his detection eyes again, but even then, no information appears about the stranger at the door. So, he asks directly if the boy is a dragon. As flames flare up around the intruder, Kang realizes his suspicion was right. Dragons truly exist in this world. The young man, burning with fury and magic, demands to know how Kang figured out his identity. Yet, Kang remains unshaken. Even as the fire rages, he calmly replies that he means no harm and mentions his artifact detector. but that only fuels the Dragon Boy's wrath. Kang, still composed, offers no resistance. He tells the boy he can take the egg, suggesting only that he clean it before doing so. Strangely, those words make the dragon even angrier. His eyes dart across the kitchen until they land on a knife, one forged from blue dragon scales. Sniffing at the countertop, he demands to know if it's made from dragon bones. The sight of his kin's remains turned into mere kitchen tools drives the Dragon Boy into a frenzy. Power surges from his body as he begins transforming into a monstrous, terrifying form. But Kang doesn't flinch, not even a little. The dragon unleashes a blazing orb of magic straight toward him. Kang counters, channeling his own magic while snatching up a nearby pot. He positions it right in front of the dragon's glowing eyes. With a swing like a tennis serve, he smashes the energy right back toward the creature. The dragon is caught completely off guard by the unexpected move. And before he can even react, Kang rockets forward with blinding speed. Channeling all his strength, he slams the pot squarely into the dragon's face. Dazed, the dragon suddenly recognizes the voice, a memory flashing back to a time when those same words had been hurled at the Demon King. He remembers Kang standing tall, sword in hand, demanding the king hand over the artifact or face destruction. Without hesitation, Kang had faced a colossal dread dragon head-on. The creature had roared and slashed at him, ignoring the cries of the terrified child nearby. The Dragon Boy now remembers. It was this same man who brought him despair that day. And now, the child of that once mighty dragon stands before Kang again, reeling from the blow and slowly losing consciousness. Kang, as calm as ever, tells him that once he's done cleaning up, he can leave with his belongings. In a tone that's polite but edged with threat, Kang admits he doesn't like dragons and warns him clearly. If the boy refuses to obey, violence will be the next resort. With no other option, the Dragon Boy picks up the bucket and rags. As he scrubs the floor, he explains that he came from the continent of Span and was cast into this world through an interdimensional rift. Muttering to himself, Kang notes that the continent of Span must indeed be connected to this world. That was why the monsters he had encountered felt strangely familiar to him. Kang admits to the Dragon Boy that, in his original world, he was known as Miraleka, but here, he chose to live under a different name. At the same time, he scolds the boy for stopping his cleaning while the dragon stays quiet, silently realizing that Kang's assumptions were correct. After some time, when the floor gleams with reflection, Kang finally allows the young man to leave, carrying the blue egg in his arms. But before going, the boy turns to face him and asks why Kang never returned his father's artifact. Kang is taken aback, realizing at that moment that the boy is the same child who had witnessed his battle against the dreadful dragon, Ekman Rex. He gestures for the dragon to come closer, but the young man hesitates, still wary after being struck earlier. Kang then asks how old he is, and the dragon calmly replies that he's 50 years old. Despite his youthful face, the cook tells him he's already 60, prompting the dragon to ask if he's secretly an elf. Chuckling, Kang shoots back playfully, asking if the dragon really thinks he looks that good. Changing the topic, Kang remarks that in the old days, punishing dragons used to be an ordinary thing. Once more, the young dragon flares up with anger, but Kang only finds his reaction amusing. The dragon, now bristling, asks if Kang intends to destroy him, but the cook shakes his head, explaining that all those artifacts were once given as gifts. Kang apologizes sincerely for not returning the artifact, saying it had shattered during his confrontation with the Demon King. Then, as if to ease the tension, he invites the dragon to sit and share a drink. The young dragon is taken aback by the audacity of such an offer, wondering how a mortal dares invite a dragon for a drink. Yet after a while, the so-called mighty dragon passes out at the table, completely drunk. Slurring his words, he laughs, saying Kang is probably the only human who's ever shared a drink with a dragon. Curious, Kang asks if he still has the egg he came for, but the young dragon's expression hardens as he angrily declares that the egg isn't just an object, it's his brother. He explains that not long ago, a portal had opened in their city while his parents were away. Kang realizes that must be how the young dragon ended up wandering between worlds. The cook responds that their stories are not so different. He too once crossed worlds, arriving on Earth, but stayed because of unfinished matters. Still skeptical, the Dragon Boy admits he finds it hard to believe that a warrior like Kang has no secrets hidden within. From his view, humans are the true monsters, always greedy, always fighting among themselves for dominance. He asks if Kang never dreamed of conquering the world. Kang calmly admits that the dragon is not wrong about humanity, but he himself has no such desires. To him, conquest and ambition are nothing but dull pursuits. Even so, the dragon refuses to trust a human's words. But Kang only tells him to look after himself and his brother. Hugging the blue egg tightly, the boy smiles with relief, overjoyed to have it back. Then, suddenly, both of them hear a faint sound. A baby dragon with wide, luminous eyes emerges into view. Recognizing his sibling instantly, the dragon calls out his name, Q. The shell has cracked completely, and the little one hatches right there on the table. Kang, surprised, asks what he should call the creature. The boy replies that he hasn't decided yet, but for now, she'll simply be hatchling. Aang then asks if the hatchling is male or female, and Q confirms that she's a female dragon. He also emphasizes that she shouldn't be treated like a mere beast. Kang gently strokes the tiny creature's furry face, noticing her small, sharp teeth. Meanwhile, Q reveals himself to be the most doting brother imaginable, endlessly repeating how adorable his sister is. The cook can't help but agree there's no denying her cuteness. Finally, Kang asks where the young dragon plans to take his little sister next. The two lock eyes for a moment, saying nothing. Outside, sunlight pours through the window, and Kang suggests that the young dragon should have a meal before setting off. Far away, a desolate wind sweeps through another land. Demons stir with the storm, and the gusts carry the stench of blood and decay. A strand of white hair drifts loose as someone calls out the name Miro. Weak and trembling, a faint voice whispers that it's still alive. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, Kang is busy preparing two mouth-watering hamburgers made with Belto and Triceratops meat. He offers one to the dragon and another to feed the baby, but the young dragon curiously asks how much such a meal costs. Aang replies that it's priced at $10 but insists that he doesn't need to pay. Q thanks him softly, then wonders if Kang happens to offer lodging as well. Shaking his head, Kang admits he doesn't, though he can't help but ponder the loneliness of a dragon stranded in a foreign world. The young dragon then offers him magical stones as payment, and Kang realizes that such generosity from a dragon would certainly cause a stir among the scholars. Yu places 2 Class 4 magical stones on the table as his token of gratitude, but out of nowhere, the cook bursts into uncontrollable laughter. Hearing the baby dragon make a soft chirping sound, he looks down and asks if she's still hungry. As he gently feeds the little creature, he can't help but conclude that raising something like this on Earth wouldn't be easy at all. His thoughts wander to Miro, the frail being he left behind, and he quietly admits he misses that other world. The young dragon, meanwhile, reflects on the bittersweet thought that he might never see this tiny hatchling again in his lifetime. Finally, Kang decides to let the boy stay for a few days under his roof. Yet Q insists he can't rely on Kang's generosity without giving anything in return. Determined, he declares that he'll repair King Kanjar's spell with his own hands. But the magic goes slightly awry, spiraling out of his control. From the swirl of energy, Cass the immortal goblin appears, cheerfully greeting them both. Known as a goblin who cannot die, he manages a vast collection of items within his personal subspace. Kang asks him how many magical stones are currently stored inside. Cass replies that there's still a fair number remaining. He then hands one of the stones to the young dragon. Kang starts conversing with the goblin, who watches him with keen curiosity. Cass seems genuinely impressed by what he's witnessing. After a brief exchange, the goblin bids the two farewell and vanishes. Kang watches the empty space thoughtfully. Then, turning to Q, he says he'd like his help with something. The next morning, the sky stretches wide and blue. The baby dragon naps soundly on the bed, while behind them, tall, fierce flames roar upward. Kang instructs Q that if he keeps breathing fire at random, he'll just end up burning everything. He must learn control, so they decide to try again. For the next round of training, Kang already has a slab of meat roasting on the spit. Q, curious, asks whether the weapon used earlier was just an ordinary tool. The cook shakes his head, explaining that it was actually called the Ricofal axe. Q stares in disbelief, asking why he insists on using priceless relics for something as trivial as cooking. Kang just smiles and replies that it's an interesting observation. Suddenly, someone calls out to them from nearby. A man bows politely, saying he decided to stop by after finishing his patrol. In the next moment, we see more dishes stacked up in the sink. While eating, the visitor seems completely satisfied with the meal. He asks if Kang has hired a new helper, which earns an annoyed glance from Q. The man then mentions that a new dungeon has appeared in the underground passage between Sinshin and Siddhartham. Apparently, another dungeon is in the process of forming. Dungeons, as they all know, are places where monsters breed, essentially gates that summon beings from other dimensions. The danger level of this one is rated at level 5. As a result, Sadim, Mr. Kim Sang-woo, and Team Zenkaku have all been assigned to the mission. Additionally, Ms. Cheyenne will be leading her own unit into the field. As a precaution, a secondary backup team is being assembled, and the recruitment square is already crowded with applicants. The man goes on, saying that most of those people probably have families waiting for them at home, and he feels fortunate to hold a steady job himself. Soon after, he excuses himself and leaves as his break comes to an end. Aang notes that Avado Rose Grilled seems to be getting quite a positive reception lately. He thinks perhaps he should pick up more supplies from a homie, and so he heads out into the streets to buy what he needs. Along the way, he catches the sound of a commotion nearby and listens closely. The man making the speech looks oddly familiar to him. It turns out to be the spear wizard, Kim Sang-gu, supposedly a level 2 awakened. Though this must be where the recruitment drive is happening. In today's world, dungeon raiding groups are called attack parties. As Earth has turned into something resembling a fantasy realm, its vocabulary naturally followed. While tanks and healers are treated like royalty, DPS fighters remain the most oversaturated role. Countless people are struggling to earn a spot among those ranks. Most of them fight not for glory, but because they have families to protect and feed. The protagonist quietly scans the entire crowd, studying every movement with a keen gaze. Pujawu, he thinks, is genuinely a good-hearted man. He just wishes that Puja would take better care of himself. Out on the streets, a man slips his hand into his pocket. When he pulls out his wallet and opens it, it's completely empty. His face shows confusion, as if he's unsure what to do next. Another man's hand reaches out to grab the handle of a bag. Han keeps watching his surroundings with focused attention. The young man's expression turns thoughtful, lost in quiet contemplation. Glancing to his side, he notices a man asking whether the restaurant is still open. The protagonist unlocks the door and welcomes him in, receiving a polite word of thanks. Visitor asks if the place serves ramen, and Khan confirms that it does. Raven remains the same inexpensive meal option it has been for the past 3 decades. The man then inquires about the price, and Khan replies, "It's just $2." Without hesitation, the man orders 5 bowls of it. He confidently adds that he'll be able to finish them all. As he prepares the order, Khan uses his analytical gaze to observe the customer. Realization dawns. It's a food god. The young man recalls having someone like that on his team once. The more that kind of person eats, the stronger they grow, and the quality of the ingredients amplifies the effect. Especially when consuming meat from high-grade monsters, the benefits can be immense. However, the power of that ability is hard to utilize unless one develops by eating strong monster meat consistently. At first, such people suffer from constant hunger, but after reaching a certain level of mastery, the condition stabilizes. Yet, it seems this man hasn't reached that stage yet. Soon, the food is ready and placed before him. The man's eyes widen, astonished by the sheer quality of the dish. If his moral alignment hadn't been good, Khan might have turned him away even if he were a food god. Still, his skill level is impressive, that much is certain. The Ataho meat used in the meal should produce a fairly potent effect. As he eats, the man thanks Khan sincerely, clearly savoring every bite. He's amazed by the taste, remarking that he never imagined monster meat could be so rich and fragrant. Driven by delight, he continues eating with renewed energy. Soon, he tips the bowl completely upside down, finishing everything in one go. To him, the experience feels nothing short of extraordinary. Turning toward the cook, he expresses heartfelt gratitude for the meal. Then he reaches into his pocket to pull out some money for payment. While counting the change, he notices that one of the bills is torn and worn. Embarrassed, he apologizes for handing over such dirty money. With a sheepish smile, he promises to return another time. Han notices the dust covering his clothes. He quietly assumes that the man must be going through difficult times. After a long while, fate brings that same man before him once more. Wandering the streets, the weary figure looks completely exhausted. Then, lifting his head, he spots an enormous gate suspended in the sky. In the heart of the city, a colossal portal stands open. Guards order the crowd to keep their distance, and a man steps forward, introducing himself as Desperto, asking if he can assist in any way. But the guards inform him that he's merely an ordinary awakened one and wouldn't be of use in this dungeon. A white-haired officer advises him instead to seek safety elsewhere. As he turns to leave, Desperto is startled to find his daughter, Mi Jin, standing there. He immediately asks why she came to such a dangerous area, and she explains that she's there to help the injured. The girl then asks what her father is doing there, and he replies softly that he came because he's worried about what might happen. Medjin gets irritated and says all he knows how to do is work and eat. She tells him she's only there for the money and pushes him away, saying he should just leave. The man drops his neckties at the ground. His daughter remarks that he doesn't even have a real weapon. The warriors begin stepping out of the portal, walking down the street as the chaos settles. A red-haired warrior announces the end of the dungeon raid, calling for all healers to treat the injured. After her announcement, the people nearby thank her sincerely for her hard work. The narration explains the kinds of abilities that awakened individuals possess. There are 5 stages before reaching the master level, and a weekend training facility known as Cipher School. Once someone masters their first awakened class through training, they can choose a second one. And when a person masters 2 classes, the Association of Awakened designates them as rank 1 or higher. Therefore, if someone awakens with a weak ability or grows at a slow pace, it's natural for them to find peace doing something that fits who they are. A lone hero reflects that he's already reached the 6th class, and perhaps that's as far as he'll ever go. Suddenly, Shiloh calls out, saying something serious has happened. He explains that his pet dragon, Cool, spoke while chewing on candy. The man laughs, making fun of the creature's name, but Shiloh insists that isn't the point. It turns out the dragon was actually saying, "Daddy." Miro is completely taken aback and asks the red-haired boy if that name doesn't sound a bit too Korean. The boy replies that the dragon chose that name for himself. Shiloh is thrilled that the little creature calls him Daddy. The two then start discussing what class the baby dragon should have. Suddenly, a young man bursts into the place calling for Miro, asking if he can get 5 bowls of ramen right away. Ilho reflects on how he somehow ended up as a restaurant manager, while the man continues telling his story to Miro. Regretfully, the man says he once found his daughter in the middle of a portal but couldn't save her. The guards had ordered him to evacuate since he was only a level 7 awakened. Meanwhile, his daughter had survived thanks to her powerful healing ability, earning recognition as a 3rd class. The man goes on, explaining that he was invited to visit her school for observation day. It was an extremely expensive academy, so Miro decided to buy something nice to wear for the occasion, but even a decent tie was too much for him. In the end, he chose not to go, thinking it would only embarrass his daughter to have a father who couldn't provide for her. Covering his face with one hand, he lets out a bitter laugh, still surprised at how hungry he feels. You know that kind of moment? Manho says he's useless, yet he still needs to eat if he ever wants a chance to be sent to one of those zones where buildings collapse after portal explosions. Gulho calls out to Ken, who's working in the kitchen. To the young man's surprise, the chef asks if it'd be a problem if he made the boy gain a little weight, which makes him protest loudly. Before he can respond further, the restaurant owner clarifies that it was only a joke, but Ken's attention has already shifted toward the dragon skin on the table. He asks why the chef is staring at that piece he brought back. As the man turns his gaze toward the skin, the red-haired boy shouts that he planned to keep it as a souvenir. An extra-large bowl of ramen topped with actual dragon skin is served. Shiloh sets the hot pot in front of Miro, mentioning that he had a lot of leftovers. The god of food eats it joyfully. While he enjoys his meal, the restaurant owner looks out the window toward the street. Manho finishes eating, gives his thanks, and leaves the payment on the table. Before heading out, he thanks Shiloh for listening to him. As the man walks toward the door, the protagonist watches him go. Then the owner calls out, saying life is hard, and it would be nice if at least one thing could be easy. Still, he reminds him that good things eventually happen to those who keep working hard. Finally, he tells Manho to give it his all to survive tomorrow, because he'll be waiting for him at the restaurant. Shiloh gives him a gentle smile as Manho walks away, and appears at the door beside the boss and asks why nothing has changed. Shiloh replies that he did everything he could to help the man grow stronger. With a frustrated look, the redhead, still upset about losing his precious item, asks why he bothers helping that man at all. The boss stays silent for a moment, then quietly says that the man reminds him of his father. This unexpected confession takes Ken by surprise. Back home, Manho carefully opens the door. As he enters, he finds his daughter sleeping soundly, but soon she starts calling for her father in her dreams. It seems like she's having a nightmare. The girl's eyes fill with tears as she apologizes in her sleep. The man gently places his hand on her head, assuring her that everything's okay and apologizing as well. He says sorry for embarrassing her, for not living like everyone else, and for not giving her a comfortable life. As he tucks the blanket around her, he softly says that he'll always love her. When morning comes, Manho is already running through the city toward the recruitment site. At the entrance, a bearded man asks to see his awakening registration card. He also asks for his name. Hearing the name Manho, the young man recognizes him as the one who fainted during the last incident. Manho looks worried, but the young man assures him that since the issue was resolved, he can still use the portal. With a swift gesture, the bearded man summons a glowing portal in the sky. The recruitment period is over, and the mission will now begin. Elsewhere, Shiloh walks calmly through the busy streets. Suddenly, a bus stops right in front of him. Unfazed, he simply looks at the vehicle. Meanwhile, at the portal site, something unusual happens. The portal is rapidly closing. The warriors try to grasp the situation. Sangyu asks for a report, and someone explains that only awakened individuals of class 5 to 7 were allowed to pass through the gate. Meanwhile, Mei-in searches frantically for her father. A system message appears, announcing that the dungeon boss has emerged. The worried girl looks up, still calling out for her dad. Then, Manho's foot is seen stepping through the tall grass. Nearby, a group of men begins checking the entire perimeter of the forest. Suddenly, a huge monster appears behind him. It charges at the man with full force. Strangely, Manho feels a rush of energy surging through his body. A startled girl nearby asks what's going on. It seems there's a breach forming inside the dungeon. The massive green foot of a creature comes into view, and then a gigantic dinosaur bursts out before them. The man stares at the beast in fear. Normally, such creatures only appear when an additional dimensional rift opens, something that's extremely rare. And when that happens, countless people can lose their lives. The Tigrex monster charges in their direction, forcing the group to run for their lives. The man suddenly notices something that catches his eye. Crystal of mana embedded in one of the creature's bodies. If he could sell it, he could buy all sorts of things, even delicious food. One of the men yells for him to get out of there immediately. But his greed gets the better of him, and Manho moves closer to grab the crystal. The Tigrex goes berserk, attacking everything in sight. It's merciless and unbelievably strong. In that moment, the man realizes this is exactly what Meijin meant when she called him pathetic. Chaos spreads across the city streets. Meijin is seen crying on the ground. In another moment, she's posing for a photo. A flashback shows her as a child, holding a magazine with a bright smile. In other memories, the same little girl is seen crying, overwhelmed with sadness. In those memories, we also see the girl as a newborn baby, back in her earliest days. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Manho suddenly opens his eyes. He realizes he cannot let his life end like this. He can't just leave Minjin all alone. With determination burning inside him, he taunts the enormous dinosaur. Just one swing of that creature's paw could easily crush anyone in its path. Even so, the man keeps provoking it, trying to lure the monster toward him. Then, gathering every ounce of strength he has left, he clenches his fists, shouting that he won't die here, not like this. Electricity crackles across his knuckles. One of the nearby men, part of the same group, watches in shock at what he's seeing. Somehow, Man-Ho has managed to block the boss monster's attack, and for the first time in his life he realizes he doesn't feel hungry. While that thought flashes through his mind, the creature lunges at him again. Using both hands, he pushes the monster back with sheer force, proving just how strong he's become. Every part of his body works together, resisting the strike, and he holds firm, refusing to let the beast overpower him. The team looks on in awe. One man asks if the evacuation is complete, while another wonders how this lone man could possibly block a T-Rex by himself. They can't believe what they're seeing. Someone jokes they should at least get his business card. Meanwhile, Man-Ho continues to hold off the raging creature. What he's displaying is a rare kind of ability, a special skill known among DPS tanks. It's a decent one, capable of reaching level 3. The issue is, not many people even know about it. A man runs off to fetch the one who managed to stop the dinosaur's attack with such intensity. In the background, the little dragon cries out softly. The hidden dungeon boss, Tigrex, has been defeated by Mr. Kim Man-Ho. Though he only endured the boss's final strike, it's enough to qualify him for Shikshin Grade 3. He's now recognized as the greatest contributor to that dungeon's conquest. With a smile, the protagonist teases the small creature, asking if it's reading the newspaper. Then he notices the little one seems heavier than before. He insists again that he's not its father, but still ends up playing with it anyway. They listen together as another piece of news airs. Many merchants and sub-agents are struggling with a wave of thefts. Goods are disappearing on a large scale, and public pressure for government intervention keeps growing. The broadcast voice advises all citizens to remain cautious. The small creature approaches Ken, suggesting he should drink some water, but before he can take a sip, Q shouts for him to stop. He warns that the water is filled with germs. He says he learned that from a book, which described a well as a place where people draw drinking water. The boy then comments that the eyes of that child from the bathroom and the eyes seen at the well looked oddly similar. He recalls a man who once came here and greatly enjoyed the food. That same man had brought some fine ingredients from the Shinshin area. Then someone calls out, addressing him as boss. It's the same man from before this time. He's brought company. Standing beside him is Captain James Engel. The captain says he's heard quite a lot about Ken, mentioning they're from the Awakener Association. The mysterious man comments that if it weren't for official business, this would actually be a nice, peaceful afternoon. He asks if the person next to the captain is Shikshin Neem, adding that he had shown incredible performance during the Cintron Raid boss fight not long ago. The man gives a shy smile and humbly thanks him. The protagonist says it's an honor to have him in the restaurant, asking if he'd like some ramen today, and the man nods. The captain says he'll take the same order. When the food is served, the man in the suit flips the bowl in one swift motion, savoring the aroma. Once again, he expresses deep gratitude for the meal. The captain then tells him to go home, reminding him that he can pick up his daughter from school. He also tells him to take a break from work whenever possible, while the protagonist quietly listens from a distance. Watching them, he realizes their relationship isn't bad at all. Then suddenly, everything goes eerily silent, leaving him confused. He looks at the man still sitting at the table, a bowl of ramen placed in front of him. The captain, meanwhile, appears completely exhausted. In another scene, a different man scolds someone, asking if they've lost their mind. He demands to know how that person even dared to touch such a creature. The monster glares back, its eyes full of rage. It's a three-tailed fox, and it lets out a terrifying, ear-piercing scream. The young man nearby looks completely disoriented, not understanding what's going on. He then notices another boy reading a newspaper, who apologizes, saying it's already late. The man replies that it's fine since there are no other customers around, and asks if the boy wants to eat something. The young man shakes his head, saying he has no appetite, but mentions that merchants are suffering constant stress because of the recent string of robberies. Then, the man asks if he can order some alcohol. Boy replies that the restaurant only serves soju and beer, so the man orders beer and requests the best dishes available. The boy asks if sashimi would be alright, and the customer agrees, saying he's willing to pay for something of good quality. Since the appearance of monsters through dimensional rifts, the era of beasts on land has begun. Fish that were once common 30 years ago have now become rare. Monsters with similar tastes are now being hunted instead. Today, they're using a German fish. Its flavor is said to resemble that of sea bass. The man admits that, in the past, he didn't care much for sashimi, thinking it was an expensive luxury not worth the cost. But later, he discovered just how amazing it really is. Now the sashimi is finally ready, and it's been ages since he last tasted that delicacy. He takes a bite and eats it with enthusiasm. The flavor is incredibly refreshing, light, and deeply satisfying. Then, he takes a sip of soju to go with it. Combination makes the experience perfect, leaving him completely content. For a brief moment, he feels free from all the burdens of work, but urgent matters remain unresolved, and so he takes 2 days off. Those days are spent eliminating monsters, fighting relentlessly day after day. The creatures keep pouring in through dimensional rifts without pause. There's no time to rest. He explains that the weapon he uses is a personal, one issued only to awakened individuals ranked level 2 or higher upon graduating from Cipher School. It's particularly effective at absorbing mana. He once felt immense pride for graduating with honors, believing he could now help save the world with his skills. But the moment he stepped out into the real world, that pride began to fade. He realized he was nothing special in this vast, unforgiving world. He also mentions being assigned to Sadavon 10 years ago and how difficult that time was. There comes a day when you finally understand that you're not as important as you thought you were. The man takes another sip of soju. Then he asks the boy if he's the guardian of Sidamon, saying that lies, hoaxes, and the fates of many rest on his shoulders, and sometimes it feels overwhelming. The protagonist asks if he has any memories of that. The man nods, saying, of course, and asks if the young one knows about the nine-tailed fox. His mind drifts back to that day. He remembers asking who dared to touch that fox. During the raid, he couldn't understand why a mere level 2 would ever do such a thing, and that's exactly what he intends to find out. Creatures with high intelligence, like the nine-tailed fox, are known as mystical beings, which means they should never be touched. For reasons still unknown, such beings don't normally harm humans. In fact, there hasn't been a single recorded attack in the last 30 years. That's why they're so rarely seen. But even then, someone dared to touch one. The man's memory flashes back to that moment. He shouts at another man, demanding to know what the hell he's done. The other man stands there, nervous and unreadable. One of his teammates calls out to the captain. The fox has appeared and it's enraged. It's the nine-tailed fox itself. He orders his team to stay on standby, and with a steady voice, he declares that he'll take the lead. In that place, a massive circle of fire blazes across the ground. Around the creature, flames rise wildly, devouring the air itself. The man's eyes reflect both awe and disbelief at what he's seeing. His team, too, stands frozen, equally stunned by the sight. But their leader quickly warns them to stop staring, saying that prolonged exposure could cause hallucinations. The creature's energy then surges even stronger, and the group braces themselves for the attack. Owen, one of the members, is already slipping into delirium. The fox keeps its sharp eyes fixed on her and the rest of the group. Then suddenly, someone shouts for the captain. Reacting fast, he leaps forward and charges toward the beast, steadying his sword for a strike. With all his strength, he hurls the blade straight at the fox. The fox's eyes widen in shock, completely caught off guard. A moment later, confusion clouds its expression. Then it releases a deep, piercing scream of agony. Still, the battle drags on through the night, until finally, after endless struggle, he manages to bring the creature down. But what follows that victory is the faint sound of crying, and when he looks closer, he sees a small cub beside the fallen beast. The evil they had unleashed had hunted down a nine-tailed fox cub, the young creature left defenseless and alone. He thinks it must have been a mistake. After all, the man was once a prodigy at Cipher School. Even brilliant people make mistakes, but this one felt different. Because in their world, such mistakes had consequences. The creature had to be eliminated. He explains that there was no other choice, that this issue had been discussed repeatedly for nearly 2 years. The protagonist replies, saying he believes that was the right call. The man stands up, admitting he's probably talking too much. Maybe it's the soju getting to him. He asks for the bill, then requests a plate of sashimi to go. The young man immediately agrees. The stranger reaches into his pockets as if looking for something. In the man's memories, we see him arguing with a young man who had dared to touch that mystical being. He scolds him, saying that an apology won't help. Many lives will be lost because of his reckless act. The man had only watched the whole thing quietly, trying to understand how it all spiraled out of control. His gaze then drifts to the gaping void before him. Unlike the monsters that invaded the continent under the Demon King's command, these creatures had once lived peacefully with humans. Yet he had hunted 2 nine-tailed foxes before, and both times he mourned them deeply. Those memories still haunt him. Outside, the man unwraps the sashimi he brought. The past lingers like invisible scars, like screams no one can hear. Suddenly, he looks over his shoulder, startled. 3 enormous flames flicker before his eyes, the same scene repeating itself once again. The man watches in silence. From the fire, a paw slowly emerges. It's a cub still young and fragile. The man realizes then that he hadn't actually killed it back then. He wonders why its dying eyes had looked so desperate, and quietly admits to himself he's not fit to be a guardian. He asks how many mana crystals the creature has stolen, and whether it already grew 3 tails. The cub reaches out, snatching a piece of sashimi to eat. The man gently grabs the little fox. The creature simply stares back, curious but unafraid. Then the leader kneels down, speaking to it softly. He explains that he can't protect it any longer. The association will soon intervene. The fox must leave the city and find another home. He waves his hand firmly, urging her to go, but not long after she returns once again. The man shouts at her, telling her to leave immediately. Yet the fox refuses to move, and he eventually gives up. All he can do is ask her one last time to leave this place. The little creature finally turns and runs off into the dark night, but something catches her eye. She spots another animal through a nearby window. She walks closer to get a better look. It's surprisingly adorable. The 3-tailed fox seems soft and fluffy. She reaches out, trying to play with it. The protagonist observes the scene closely. He wonders if the small creature might be hungry, but it seems the little one has already eaten elsewhere. Then Kang Chil-ho Nim appears, asking what brings him here. He also asks whether that animal is a Gummyo, a young fox cub. Speaking gently, he introduces himself to the creature, noting that a first-grade mana crystal would be valuable for its growth. The tiny fox bites the crystal curiously. A bright, powerful light rushes through its body. The protagonist quickly tells him to leave. Then he watches as his own companion calls out softly to its little friend. Left alone, the fox cub gazes into the night, wondering if it will ever see its protector again. Lying on the forest floor, the man reflects that the city's glow isn't as bright as before. The Erugumyo once shone brilliantly, but he doesn't want the creature to return. He only wishes for its safety. As dawn breaks, the scene shifts back to the association. The knight, the blade queen, and the mage are officially appointed as guardians. The entire process is carried out under the association's authority. Its leader is President Yu Jinsu. He casually tells Cheyenne that it feels unusually hot today. Warnette asks if she should bring him some ice, but he waves it off, saying there's no need. Instead, he asks if the mandrakes have disappeared. These are plant-type monsters that live buried underground. When threatened, they release poison and require a special antidote. Even with an antidote, pulling one out of the ground makes it scream loud enough to kill weak awakeners instantly. The girl reports that 13 of them have completely vanished. The chief sarcastically asks since when root vegetables learn to grow legs and run away. Ji-young jokes they probably melted. The president says he'll contact Gabby and tells the girl to inform her. Since Gabby just returned and is still on standby, he'll assign her to investigate this first. Meanwhile, the small fox seems happy again. Then, as it nears its owner, its joy suddenly fades. The protagonist is still lying there asleep. The creature gently touches his forehead, then smiles, seemingly reassured. Still, it looks a little puzzled. It tries to grab a chair with its tiny paws. Climbing up with effort, it reaches for something. When it opens the refrigerator door, it spots a few vegetables inside. Its eyes narrow, noticing that one of them looks strangely human-like. The thing's face is terrifying. Without much thought, the little fox stuffs the entire vegetable into its mouth, but it can't swallow it and bursts into tears. The protagonist and his friend watch in confusion, unsure what just happened. His companion can't believe it actually ate that whole vegetable. Han then explains he's been studying how dimensional rifts form, visiting places where dungeons appeared. But so far, he's found nothing, only that many monsters now resemble those from the continent of Spain. The protagonist listens, clearly impressed by what he just heard. Then someone jokingly asks if he himself is also a monster, which instantly offends him. Still, that statement implies something deeper, that dragons or even greater beings might eventually emerge from the dimensional rift. The man tells Candle to keep him updated if he discovers anything during his research. Aang explains that Zil has now reached the level of a 6th-class master and asks whether he can control the rift, but the boy quickly denies it. Returning to that world, he says, is a story that spans decades, even long after the fall of the Demon King. Han nods and says they'll talk about it later since Shul needs to go to the mall for now. The weather that day is blazing hot, just as summer should be. Above the city, a massive barrier shimmers faintly across the sky. A gum woman searches the ground but can't find any traces. Even though she was told to investigate that exact direction, there's still nothing. She studies the traces of magic surrounding her, then begins crafting another spell with her own hands. For a brief moment, nervousness flickers across her face. Suddenly, another presence appears, gripping her face firmly. Shocked, she asks if this is the Ice Witch. Li Gavi looks around but can't make sense of what's happening. The stranger tells her she can call her Une and asks if she's the guardian of Sinjin. The girl confirms and introduces herself by her codename, a title given by Cipher School. She adds that she's now in her 10th year. Gabby then walks straight through the barrier, but finds not even a single trace left behind. Based on what she learned at Cipher School, she's been a level 1 guardian for over 30 years. The other woman introduces herself as Chaven. Gabby asks what the current situation is, and Chi Yan explains that they've already sealed off that area. Still, there are no signs of intrusion or hunting, and the one who built the barrier was a level 4 mage. Gabby notes that if someone managed to pass through a level 4 barrier without leaving evidence, that's a serious matter. She asks which mercenary group holds the top rank, and Chi replies it's the mercenary court of the temple in Sedaemon. Gabby says they'll head there first, but before that, they should grab a meal. Meanwhile, across the city, a man suddenly asks who's been talking about him. Aang gives a light kiss to a small creature, finding it irresistibly cute. He gazes at it like it's the most precious thing in the world, completely captivated. And honestly, he doesn't feel embarrassed even when his little sister teases him about it. Out of nowhere, he asks Kin to fill a pot with water, then proudly shows him a watermelon, even though his friend looks like he's never seen one before. He also holds up a raw chicken for him to see. Kin is shocked. It's something he's only heard about from the continent of Spain. Startled, Kin asks where Chwol found that mandrake. The protagonist casually says he stumbled upon it while walking and decided to pull it out. He explains that mandrakes have cold bodies because they're packed with energy. Plus, they have a crunchy texture and sweet flavor, perfect for both hot and cold dishes. To prepare the chicken, the protagonist stuffs it with ingredients: glutinous rice, garlic, mandrake, and green onions. Then he places everything into the pot, saying it'll be ready in no time. Suddenly, someone new appears, surprised to realize this place is actually a restaurant. 3 people step inside, immediately complimenting how good it smells. The 2 boys invite them in warmly. Protagonist smiles, saying that customers are always welcome here. 2 burly women nearby watch their interaction with curiosity. One of them says she won't eat the chicken because she's vegetarian. By that time, the food is already done. Everyone enjoys the meal, though it could have used a little more salt. The blue-haired woman takes a bite of the meat and instantly comments on how delicious and rich the flavor is. The protagonist asks if Lee Gabby is the vegetarian one, then offers her a slice of watermelon instead. Excited, she nods enthusiastically. There are many ways to enjoy the fruit, she says. Protagonist decides to try something a little different first. He begins cutting the meat into smaller pieces, then adds some fruit to the mix, showing remarkable cooking skill. Next, he pours in some liquid to blend it all together. When it's done, the dish looks cool and refreshing. The young woman can't wait to try it. She smiles and introduces herself as the Ice Witch, protector of Centron, though she admits she doesn't really like that nickname. He recalls that back in Cypher School, during a royal duel, she was provoked by an opponent and ended up freezing the entire area, causing snow to fall, thus earning her the title. Hill quietly wonders what kind of people these visitors really are. He gets the feeling that something far more important is on the horizon. Their ranks seem to be guardian class or higher, and Gabby's beauty stands out beyond words. Before leaving, she thanks him sincerely for the wonderful meal. Once they're gone, his companion comments that the woman was stunning, almost too beautiful to be human. She's probably an elf, he says. Hill nods, saying he noticed it too after scanning her aura. She had a ghostly spirit, something only elves possess. However, she lacked the ability to sense magic directly, meaning it's not just monsters coming through the rift anymore. Other intelligent species might already be living and adapting on this land. The protagonist then calls out to January, saying he's about to try something new. They're now making watermelon soju together, doing their best to enjoy the little things in life. Later, the 3 stroll through the city after their meal. He politely calls the woman ma'am and asks if they shouldn't consider the disappearing mandrakes a new kind of natural phenomenon. He points out there are no clues, no witnesses, no victims, and no trace of distribution. The other woman replies that if even Lovell with the Shadow Cat couldn't find anything, then the answer must lie somewhere unexpected. That's exactly why Lee Gabby finds the situation so suspicious. Even with no solid evidence, just intuition, she's certain something is happening, and the best she can do is report it to her superiors. They plan to head to the temple next, but for now, they still lack critical information. Meanwhile, at the temple, Captain Xian Tia Zhang is stepping down from his post. Elsewhere, a man stands beneath a star-filled sky. The night reminds him of his hometown, though the land around him keeps shifting and warping. Once filled with the scent of flowers, it now reeks of monsters and decay. Despite his exhaustion, he continues talking with the group of survivors. But when he announces that the box is closed, everyone around him screams in panic. Heng remarks that hearing the temple's operation team successfully block a monster invasion is truly impressive. Just then, his tiny pet dragon tugs at his leg. It's finally awake. The little one, curious as ever, asks to see the day's newspaper fashion page. When she spots sleeveless outfits, the protagonist explains it's because of the hot weather. Her stomach suddenly growls and she admits she's hungry. Thinking for a moment, our boy wonders what to make for breakfast. It has to be something really good. After all, life's too short and you only get 3 chances a day to eat something delicious. Then he remembers, only her life is short, not his. Smiling, he asks what she thinks about having some white rice. Since, as he jokes, whole grains are good for your health. Setting Fluffy down, he tells her to go wake up her brother. The drive-in quickly pulls up to the room. Without a moment of hesitation, it jumps onto the boy, who's still completely unconscious. A few minutes later, everyone gathers around to enjoy a bowl of bibimbap topped with egg and vegetables. The creature's brother finds the scene odd, but our boy just tells him to go ahead and mix everything together. Once that's done, the 3 of them lift their spoons, ready for the first bite, and as expected, they find the taste absolutely divine, every bit of it hitting just right. After finishing the meal, the protagonist turns to Kang, asking if the little one is doing okay. He's noticed she always falls asleep right after eating. The boy explains that since she was born just 3 months ago, soon they'll start seeing what her class might be. Apparently eating and sleeping are part of the early process. Thinking about it, Kang admits he's curious to find out what kind of class the creature will end up having. Suddenly, someone steps into the restaurant. The newcomer comments that the rice smells incredible. The protagonist says he just cooked it and asks if the guy would like some. The man agrees but says he'll eat only after the ramen. Our boy convinces him to just have both together instead. Not long after, a Zencac team member flips through that day's newspaper. Meanwhile, our chef continues to serve the food. Sixen compliments the meal, saying the kimchi is especially good. The protagonist, thinking to himself, notes that of course it is. He used mandrake after all. Then, a man from the association walks in and greets the 2. He explains that he's just stopping by to say hello since he doesn't have time to sit down for a meal. Kang hands him a drink, saying he understands. Things must be rough with this heat. The man nods, agreeing, but adds that he's been managing fine, probably because eating here has been boosting his stamina. Then he turns to the other young man, asking if the spearman's been acting restless lately. The young man nods and says yes. He explains that the spearman's been feeling down, giving the protagonist some context. Dixon adds that both she and Tai Zhang are retiring, which has put everyone on edge. What makes it even sadder is that the man retiring is someone they've all admired deeply. Curious, our boy asks what happened, and the young man begins talking about an incident from 10 years ago. It was the first mission ever given to Kim Sang-yu, who's now the current Lancer. Back then, 5 Guardians lost their lives during the invasion. We learned that Taeho was classified as a level 3 awakened, but his true strength far exceeded that level. Because of that, he was considered an extraordinary leader, especially during the monster invasion war 10 years ago. Many people owe their lives to him. The scene shifts to another location, where the president of the association, Yu Jinsu, quietly says he knew this day would come. Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, and he tells the person to come in. The retiring Lancer steps inside, greeting him. It's been a long time. They both sit down at the table without delay. President, clearly curious, asks if the man truly intends to leave, and he confirms that he does. The president raises his voice, asking if he isn't being too hasty. After all, he's the one who built the foundation 30 years ago and fought through that cursed battle. Placing his cup on the table, the Lancer calmly asks the president to listen carefully to what he has to say. He explains that no one achieves anything alone. Many have worked hard to build the world they live in now. But from this moment on, he says, it's time for others to carry the weight while he finally lays it down. Without waiting for a reply, Taehoan stands up saying he's already late and leaves the room. Alone again, Yu murmurs that Sang-yu must be heartbroken. Outside, the Lancer reflects that his successor has already been chosen, a young man named Kang Hik, a promising awakened turning 30 this year. It feels like the perfect day to pass the torch. Suddenly, someone calls him crazy and asks if he's ever heard of the word hope. Turning around, he finds himself face to face with the current Lancer. The scene shifts again to the protagonist's restaurant. The two men arrive together. Taking the lead, Sang-yu asks to see the menu. Our boy tells him that today's special is homemade Korean food. While speaking, he quietly notes that the older man seems to be about his own age. Kang steps closer and asks if it's okay if the food takes a little while. The retired Lancer shakes his head and says there's no rush. He can take as long as he needs. Turning back, the current Lancer says only his friend will be eating. He's busy and plans to leave first. As the young man heads out, Taeho apologizes, saying his friend's still immature. The protagonist, puzzled, asks what he means. Taking out a cigarette, the old man explains that the young man is a guardian and wonders aloud when Sang-yu grew up so much. Remembering they're indoors, Kang tells him it's fine to smoke since no one else is around. Looking at the pot on the stove, the ex-Lancer says the food smells amazing. It's been ages since he last smelled rice cooking. The familiar scent makes him nostalgic, and the protagonist stays silent. Thinking quietly, he realizes everyone has something they long for, so maybe he should make a soybean paste stew. Each cook has their own recipe, and his style is to preserve that slightly rough, rustic taste. He lets the soybean paste and vegetables simmer over low heat for a long time, bringing out the flavor of a true countryside meal. Then he grills and Avon grills a salted fish. The result is a complete traditional Korean dish. When the man sees it, he's instantly captivated. His amazement grows as he takes the first spoonful. His eyes brighten with emotion, and a warm smile appears on his face. Taejong softly says it feels like being home again. Looking at the protagonist, he adds that it's been 30 years since he arrived in Seoul, and his memories have started to blur. It's a reminder of how fast time really flies. With a hint of sadness, he says that when he left his hometown, he thought he'd return soon. He recalls the moment, still back in that town, when he picked up a sword, and that simple act greatly enhanced his physical abilities. Even though it was officially called Korea, it didn't take long before monsters, what we now classify as bosses, began their invasion. That was the start of the last Great War. We're taken back to that fateful day, seeing him in combat with a massive creature. As he fights, he thinks about how strong the monster is and that if the situation doesn't change soon, he'll die fighting alone. Suddenly, Sheen appears and strikes the creature. His hands are covered in what looks like strawberry juice. Though terrified and wanting to run, he takes a step forward because in moments like that, that's what makes him truly human. Gathering himself, Taeho positions his sword and spins, unleashing a powerful strike against the great beast. The scene returns to the present, where we see Sang-yu once more. He knows he must ensure the quiet zone becomes a place of real peace. Now he understands that he learned this from the man who, even in exhaustion, managed to shape an incredible next generation. Shin agrees, and our boy realizes he can now grasp what the former spear wielder had gone through. When the man asks for the bill, the protagonist tells him it's on the house. Thanking him for the meal, the man then asks the boy to take good care of the current spear wielder. Kang says he's already a great guardian. The old man smiles and agrees with that. Still teary-eyed, Kang asks him to look after himself and live a good life. He mentions that both the human who just left and the mysterious creature had given him a shining stone, a strange item that never caused him harm. The scene shifts back to Kang, who asks about the Lancer, but suddenly the image begins to distort. The protagonist appears, immediately attacking with his gauntlet. The king reacts, activating his magical shield. He braces for the incoming strike. Then, the protagonist finally lands his blow. Drenched in sweat, he turns his gaze to the side. He turns his head and realizes that Kang is standing right there, trembling from head to toe. Understanding what he's just done, the protagonist immediately apologizes, admitting that even though it's been 10 years since the war ended, he still sometimes wakes up from terrible nightmares. Reflecting on it, he wonders if it's because he recently heard about the great monster invasion from Xi'an. After all, that was the same day he faced the Demon King himself. The scene shifts to that very Demon King, now doodling on the floor with chalk reminding everyone he's just a baby. Approaching him, the protagonist asks if the drawing on the floor is supposed to be a chicken. The little girl glances up and responds with a few adorable words. Kneeling down, the young man wonders aloud if she might actually be a mermaid, before gently lifting the tiny dragon into his arms. He concludes that he can't bring himself to scold her for anything. Patting the fluffy creature, he says he'll cook some chicken soon, so she should erase all the drawings for now. Watching this, Kang comments that he really needs to teach his sister how to clean up after herself. Seeing the little girl affectionately patting the young man, Kang jokes that she seems closer to him than to her own brother. Our boy laughs it off and says he'll head to the market. He tells Kang to stay behind and watch the house. Outside, we see crowds of people walking through the bustling city. As he shops, the protagonist explains that the reason he's buying so much chicken is simply because someone at home eats a lot. The vendor laughs, calling him lucky, and mentions that a festival will be held later that day. When the protagonist reaches the festival area, he's met by a large robot surrounded by excited onlookers. Watching from a short distance, he quickly realizes that it's a golem. Curious, our boy asks what the woman nearby means when she refers to it as an ogre. She explains that ogre is actually the name of that rideable golem. It's powered by a mana crystal. Thinking it through, Kang notes that the creature's strength is impressive, but its limits are pretty obvious. That must mean not just anyone can pilot it, so he decides to ask for clarification. The woman tells him the operator is an awakened individual, only level 1, surprisingly. Still thinking, the protagonist realizes that's because piloting a golem requires proper channeling. It draws energy directly from the stone body, and only a few gifted people, like Kim Hoon, can manage that. He thanks the woman and says goodbye, and she calls after him to ask if his restaurant will be open later. Back home, right in the middle of the living room, Fluffy is sitting comfortably. Seeing Kang's expression, the protagonist asks if this mess is his doing. Excited, the young man blurts out that his sister has just been classified as a spirit master. He goes on to explain that Cool's hair is white because her mother was a blue dragon. The protagonist immediately asks if that mother is Undina, the water spirit. In the mermaid's lap, the little dragon starts calling the spirit Mommy. Smiling, Kang says that this creature is truly exceptional, and the young man beside him agrees. Thinking to himself, the protagonist realizes it's been a long time since he's seen a spirit in non-combat mode. We learn that the basic principle of summoning spirits is quite simple. They're called forth from multidimensional realms. For instance, Undina belongs to water, Salamandra to fire, Silvov to wind and earth. The act of summoning usually happens only as a last resort. It connects the demon realm, the spiritual realm, and even the continent of Spain, as well as Earth's own dimension. That makes 4 in total, though apparently 2 of them are linked. After thinking so much about it, the protagonist finally admits he can't make sense of it anymore. Turning to Kang, he asks if he's at least taught Fluffy how to clean. We then see that the one actually cleaning is Undina herself. Delighted, our boy declares that it's time to throw a celebration party. In the kitchen, he announces that the main dish will be chicken and begins explaining that 30 years ago there was a fried chicken boom across the country. Even now, there are more than 100 ways to prepare that same meat. Handing a chicken drumstick to the little dragon, he says it tastes best when you hold it and take a big bite. Fluffy takes the food eagerly and shows that she learns incredibly fast. The sight makes Kong smile warmly. Looking into her bright, sparkling eyes, he asks if it isn't just delicious. Unable to resist any longer, Kang exclaims that he can't take it and reaches for a piece himself. The protagonist, teasing him, says that the way someone eats can reveal their true character, so Kong must choose which part he'll eat first. Starving, Huel's brother nervously asks if that really matters. When the boy confirms it does, he starts sweating and admits that his favorite part is the chicken neck.